Hello, Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin. I am Falcoholic Kevin, joined for another episode of Tuesday Takes with Tre'Shon Diaz. He is, of course, at Tre'Shon on the Twitters. Tre'Shon, welcome back. I know we had to take a week off at the Tuesday Takes because, in case you guys haven't noticed, I've been moving around. The show's been in some different places. That's not stopping this week, but I am back home for this show. But Tre'Shon, welcome back. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Third victory weekend Monday. It's crazy. The Birds just can't stop winning games.
Yeah. Undefeated since we started this program, since we started Tuesday Takes. So we'll have to keep those good vibes going. But yeah, the Falcons do pull off the NFC South gauntlet with 3 wins. Tremendous stuff there. Some of those wins were pretty sweaty. This one was less sweaty, thankfully. Basically, I mean, through the third, this was a weird game because I feel like hindsight, you look at this game, you're like, oh, this was a blowout. This game felt very much in danger up until that AJ Terrell interception in the third quarter. I think everyone's kind of just forgotten that it was not like it was not out of contention at all. I mean, the Falcons had an 8-point lead, so it's not like not like they were in danger of necessarily falling behind, but it was like the Panthers were driving. It was starting to look sketchy. They had given up that touchdown before halftime, which was, I think that might have been their worst series of the whole season. Like that was bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm surprised people aren't talking about that drive more specifically because that was like,
yeah, that was alarming. That was alarming to say the least, but the Falcons do come away at the end of the day. AJ Terrell gets that pick, which he was having a rough game. So I really do appreciate that he's like, nope, locked in, ready to make the game-changing play when they needed to make it. And after that, you could tell Carolina just phoned it in. It's like, we're done. That was it. This was our chance. We were driving like inside the 20 basically, and then bam, the game totally changed on that. The Falcons took complete control in the fourth quarter and finish this one out with a heavy helping of Tyler Allgeier, just like we've been wanting to see all year. Like, oh, well, will Allgeier ever get a chance to close the game out? And he finally did, so good for him. But yeah, we're not going to spend too much time on the negatives, but we will talk about both the offense and the defense, the good and the bad, and get to this Falcons win over the Panthers. And spend a little bit of time talking about the upcoming game because there will not be a Wednesday show this week. Like I said, I will be traveling again tomorrow. I have a busy schedule, so no Wednesday show, but we will have a game preview for you on Friday, and of course a post game show. So just one show down this week, and then after that should be back to normal. Theoretically. We'll see how things develop. But before we dive into the takes today, I want to bring you guys a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting this season. No matter what you want to bet on, whether that's the Falcons, whether that's betting on the Saints going 0-3 over the next 3 games, what have you, whatever you want to bet on, it's available. I think I'm really interested to see how the line for this Falcons this Falcons Seahawks line looks. It is going to be at home, so I expect the Falcons to be favored, but Seahawks kind of on a downward slope, the Falcons kind of on an upswing. That game does make me very nervous, but so maybe you like to bet on games that make you nervous. I don't, but if you do, they've got it at BetOnline. They've got every stat. They've got matchup breakdowns, even live odds and spreads to bet on while the games are going. And with the largest catalog of odds on everything, including football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA, and they've even got, for the next month, political props. If you're a true degenerate, you can bet on political props. And I'm not here to judge, but yeah, that one seems especially degen behavior to me. But who am I to judge? Honestly, you guys bet on whatever you want. It's probably the same odds as most of these other things. So when the game's over, they've also got like casino for all those needs, including blackjack, poker, over 150 different slots games. So what do you wait for, folks? Head to that website today, betonline.ag, to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online. The game starts here. All right. Well, let's start off with some positivity. I don't want anyone accusing us of being haters. We don't have Aaron Freeman on the show this week, so no haters here. But the offense comes out. I believe this is the first game they win the time of possession, and they only won it by a little bit, but they did technically win time of possession 30 minutes, 40 seconds to 29 minutes, 20 seconds for the Panthers, and they were trailing in time of possession for most of the game. But again, strong fourth quarter closes us out. nice to see that change. Nice to see the team actually put together and get a majority of the time of possession in a single game this season. So what were your thoughts on that development? I didn't realize they'd actually pulled it off until after the game.
Yeah. And it's funny because like when you look at how close it was, it's like it really was until that Tyler Allgeier drive that they kind of were able to build back and get a little bit of extra advantage on the time of possession. But overall, I think it was good to see them go out and do what they were supposed to do against a team that's just reeling and doesn't really have many answers. You're supposed to win the time of possession battle. You're supposed to win the turnover battle. You're supposed to walk out with more first downs, et cetera, et cetera. So it was good to see them do that. And, obviously we have some of those other things that we need to talk about. But, overall, you wanted to see the Falcons get their first commanding win of the year. And, they walked out of there winning by 18. So they did what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, they did check the box. Ultimately, you do come away. Like, all I asked for was a 2-score victory. I wasn't really going to be picky about the specifics of the 2 scores, but the Falcons do technically get a 3-score victory with 18 points. I know some people thought this was a 2-score win. No, it's technically 3, because 2 touchdowns, 2 extra points is 16, and then you get field goal for the extra. So, 3-score game, really, like... I had to start walking back to I had to watch the game at a sports bar on the road, and then started walking back to my hotel after like the AJ Terrell interception. And basically, as soon as I left the sports bar, the Falcons just took total control of the game, and like the AJ Terrell picked it off. Falcons marched down the field and scored. They didn't let the Panthers really do anything else the entire game. Clark Phillips obviously gets that interception late, and the Falcons just take total control of this game. And we'll talk about the Clark Phillips pick 6 that should have been, and just, I feel like he should have scored it. Like, personally, like, I think he deserved it. He was going for the coach brownie points. I understand, that you're not going to get a lot of opportunities to get like that many brownie points with the coaching staff. So that is he was weighing it, and he chose to help the team. So, good for him. We'll talk about that more, but really, I think the big takeaway offensively, like, the passing game was efficient. It worked. Interestingly, Kirk Cousins, I think, had like 4 batted passes, which is just bad luck. I think it was like 4 or 5 bad passes, kind of crazy. And the Panthers D tackles just really got their hands up. So good for them. But the Falcons do have an efficient passing day, not necessarily 7.5 yards per attempt. Love to see that, but not incredibly productive, just 225 yards there. But we finally see the rushing yards explosion that we haven't really seen since the first 2 weeks of the season, as Falcons come out with nearly 200 yards. I believe they lost the 200 on kneel downs. So that's terrible. They shouldn't like take rushing yards off for kneel downs. I feel like that's corny. But what did you think about the resurgent run game? I feel like we talked about this last week, and once again, Falcons deliver on our wishes.
Yeah, it's funny, we called for more inside runs and we got them. It just didn't actually get dispersed the way that we had predicted or requested. We saw Tyler Allgeier, who's been like the outside zone god, become the inside zone back in this one, and Bijan was stuck with outside zone duty primarily throughout the game, but it didn't matter. Offensive line probably had their best day blocking since like we said, week 2. They were really able to create a lot of holes and gaps for Bijan and Allgeier to run through. That I feel like that was the biggest difference today, is that neither of them were getting hit until they were 3-4 yards down the field. Carolina wasn't able to set the edge. We weren't seeing them blow up the wide zone or any of the concepts like that. Bergeron, Lindstrom took care of everything, like we expect. And so it's great to just kind of see like, hey, this is what we thought we were going to get from day one. We kind of were like not really worried about the run group or the run game, but it's kind of become a little bit of an issue. But this was kind of the get right game, as a former Panther Carolina Steve Smith would tell you. This was a get right game, and the Falcons got right on the ground, and that's what we needed to see more than anything. So it was great seeing them get ready because going to have a really good opportunity to follow that up against another run defense that is just kind of really bad right now in the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, no, I was hoping to see it, and like you look at the I think the Panthers' run defense isn't as bad as like the raw stats tell you. Obviously, they had even more injuries going into this game, so that is definitely something that contributed. But the Panthers, like prior to this week, they were actually, I believe, 12th in yards per carry allowed. So they were actually like not allowing tons of yards per carry. They were just facing by far the most rushing attempts in the NFL, and we can see why. They get behind, they just get clobbered. But yeah, the Falcons didn't really have any issues running the ball against them. Chris Lindstrom comes out and dominates. I think Matthew Bergeron, this is up here for his best game because I think he was really good in pass pro too. I hope that we can get the best version of Matthew Bergeron more consistently. I think this year we haven't really gotten like a really bad Bergeron game. Like last year we had a couple of those that I felt kind of weighed down his perception. This year I think he's been mostly average with a few of these spike games. And that's kind of what you're going to get as you're an improving offensive lineman. You know, you kind of want to stabilize, not have bad games, add in those great games. And I think this was definitely one of those great games for him. But yeah, McGarry looked like he finally was, I think last week was maybe a little early. Healthier. Yeah, last week was maybe a little early to rush him back.
Yeah.
This week looked back to his normal self. And Ryan Newsel too, like he was a guy that I think PFF hated him, which I didn't really understand. We talked about that last week. I was like, he looks pretty average to me. I don't know why he's got a 42 grade. Yeah. But this week they changed their mind. And he actually, I think, finished with, I think he was tied for the highest pass blocking grade or close to it. So good for him. Not a dominating defensive front for Carolina, but definitely good for them to dominate because they just haven't done that very often this season. So that the offensive line play in particular, I think was a real strong point of this game.
Yeah, and I think the other guy we haven't mentioned yet is Charlie Warner was unleashed. We finally saw the blocking tight end that we were promised when we acquired him from the 49ers, after he walked this year. So that's kind of something that we've been like, okay, they've been asking Kyle Pitts to block a lot. And Kyle Pitts has actually done a better job than I think he's being given credit for. He had one of his better days blocking Sunday as well. So, it's really good to see Warner get in there more. It seems like Z-Rob is less worried about, I don't know if it was like a tipping his hand kind of thing, if he was just nervous, or just was still kind of trying to work through the nuances of getting Charlie in there while also implementing pass plays with him on the field so that nothing gets too predictable or anything like that. But it was very nice to see Charlie Warner out there. And he was just wrecking shop. It was great to see. And, hopefully we see that continue because he is a very important piece of this run game. Because he's the closest thing we're going to have to a fullback this year. And he's the best, sixth blocking option that the offense has.
Yeah. And it, like you mentioned, kind of crazy to see it. But, Charlie Warner comes in for 25 snaps and is run blocking on 23 of them. So it's like, we're just going to dispense with pretending that he's not the blocker. Who cares? He runs one route and then run blocks 23 times and then pass blocks once. Kyle Pitts, again, still played the majority of the tight end snaps. He played 45 snaps, which I think is like a good number for him. That's like 70-ish% of the snaps. 65, 70% of the snaps. I guess there's like 70 total, but they had a couple of weird plays in there. He's blocking at about 16 of those. So again, that seems like a better spread for Pitts. Because like you said, I don't think he's been a huge, he's not been a liability over the last couple of weeks. I think early in the season we saw some bad games and I think he has stabilized there, which is great to see. The one that's, Ross Dwelly continues, I think, to not, I don't know. PFF really grilled him in this game. I saw one bad block from him, but he only played 9 snaps, so I don't know. But it seems like, we may need to find another third tight end, especially if we have an injury. But yeah, ultimately the tight end room, I think it came in strong. I'm not too concerned about Ross Dwelly, unless he has to play a lot more, which hopefully we don't have to see. But yeah, you mentioned the tight end room came correct too, and it was really a full team thing. And I think the Falcons have the offense has been really encouraging in that they're sort of taking steps every week. Like you can see, it's like, okay, like the Bucs game was like the passing game comes together game. And this week was like, okay, the passing game's working great, but this is an opponent we need to run the ball against. Let's like really work on the run game this week. And they did that. And the offensive line continues to improve and we're getting stuff more involved. So I feel pretty confident in them continuing to move forward and make strides there. And, you know, another side of that is the wide receiver group, which again, all the receivers I think played pretty well in this one. Not the most like productive day overall. They didn't really have to air it out a ton against Carolina, but you know, Drake London again kind of shows that I think it was obvious going into the season, but I think it's clear now. Like Drake London is the number one guy. You know, Darnell Mooney is going to get a lot of targets too, but Drake London seems to be the guy that Kirk goes to in those really important moments. Especially like in the short red zone area. And it's nice to see a quarterback actually throw on target to Drake London in the red zone. Like I feel like we never saw that until this year. So nice to see.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think that like with Drake, especially in his production, I think you make a really good point about the on target, because like for all the flack that Drake gets about the amount of separation he creates, the man gets open, and getting open looks different for everybody. And like the best example of this is Drake's touchdown, where he has the nasty corkscrew and then comes inside and he's able to just create an entire window. The defender is right on him, sure, but now the defender is completely behind him. He's completely framed out, and there's nothing but just between Drake London and Kirk at this point, and it's an easy touchdown. We've seen Mariota miss those. We've seen Ritter miss those. And like, it's, you know, we're finally getting to the point to where you're seeing the polished route running skills that were talked about with London coming out of college. And you're seeing a QB that's able to give him the football and knows, you know, how to place it so that it's not in harm's way, and that separation isn't, you know, what's discussed as the issue. So, you know, I think I agree with you. One, London is definitely showing like he is the one. Darnell Mooney had a quiet day. I think he like just under 40 yards. And then the most promising thing, which like I feel like Mark Sanchez killed all of his hype. Kyle Pitts had 70 yards in back-to-back games for the first time since his rookie year. Kyle Pitts is sixth among all tight ends in total yards right now. And it's just a shame that like it's just a shame that like one play is just being dominated as like who Pitts is and what happened and everything. And like, we all need to be honest about that play too. Pitts running full speed or not isn't stopping that ball from sailing out of bounds and being uncatchable. Like from an optics perspective, yes, you want to see him run it out. You want to see that play look differently and finish differently. But there's an argument that, was it miscommunication? Because Pitts looked like he was thinking, hey, back shoulder, easy money here. Like the guy in front of me is 5'11". Let me just turn around and catch it. Kirk goes for the shot to the corner. I think it's again one of those things where it's just them figuring it out, continuing to work on communication. But like there's been substantial growth there. And I think that like we're on the cusp of like a legit Kyle Pitts breakout game for the first time. And like we're closer than we've ever been to him being back. And like that should excite people. And instead, I feel like we're so focused on this like one single play when like Pitts had so many good plays that game. So it's great to see everybody kind of coming into form, like you said, in the passing game and really starting to carve out their roles.
Yeah, no, I think like in this one, I think that it's overblown. Like it was a frustrating play to watch, certainly, but Pitts clearly was confused by it. I mean, and with Cousins, the thing is too, like he just throws out of bounds sometimes. Like he's not a guy like that's one of Cousins' strengths, honestly, is like he'll dirt the ball, he'll throw out of bounds. You know, he just won't take sacks. And like he needs to, obviously, because he can't exactly escape the pocket. But it seemed like, Cousins was probably trying to dirt that ball essentially. And Pitts was like, oh, well, like, I don't know what was that coming to me, or like it looked like he thought he was just running a clear out basically. And like, yeah. I don't know if it was like an option route that he like needed to do something different on. but yeah, that there wasn't any chance of that ball being caught by anyone. I mean, maybe, Kirk was like, oh, he's 6'6", maybe he'll just like lay out for this thing. Probably not a catchable ball. You would like to see the effort, obviously, but
For sure.
it looked like that was not really designed to go there. So they lived to play another down. It was okay, but obviously, that's one of the only criticisms I think you can have of this Falcons offense in this game is they left quite a few touchdowns on the field. Like they had some that I think they could have gone for. I do think like against other teams they probably go for it, more instead of going for field goals. But I think against the Panthers they were just pretty happy to take the points, and I get that. You don't want to pass up points on the road, like against a division rival that you think you're a lot better than. You're just content to take the field goals and just kind of wear them down. And I think that was smart, to take those points when they did. Even though I usually am like an aggression first type of guy, but yeah, I mean, Falcons ultimately 50% on third down. That's a good mark for this team.
Yeah,
it's a good mark for them. And then 50% in the red zone. You'd like that to be higher, but not the worst mark either. But yeah, I agree. I think people take the Pitts stuff too seriously. Everyone's all fired up over Kyle Pitts. It's probably going to be that way for the foreseeable future. But, hopefully he can just have some more big games and kind of shut it up. Because, yeah, like you said, he's 6th in the NFL in yardage for tight ends. This is clearly a down year for tight ends. Like there's not much going on there, especially if you play fantasy. You know what I'm talking about. But
yeah.
Kyle Pitts has like basically not had like yardage in several games. So the fact that he's 6th is pretty impressive. And so I think he's got a shot this year, certainly to be the number 1 tight end if things get better. But yeah, offensively, I don't have too many criticisms. You'd like to see the team score more touchdowns in the red zone. You'd like to see, a little bit more consistency there. But other than that, I mean, I don't really have anything bad to say about this offense performance. I think they were marching down the field and controlling, the ball and doing good things for most of this game. And they took advantage of their opportunities, and because of that, they just pulled away from the Panthers. They just waited. Basically, they were content to let the Panthers make a mistake and capitalize, and they absolutely did that. And, we also, the one thing, the one turnover or whatever, the fumble, the Ray McCloud fumble, what do you think about that play? Because I was incensed about that call. Like, just I don't know how. Like, if it's either incomplete or he's down. Like, I just don't really see how they do the gymnastics to make it like, well, he never really had control, but like, so that means that he fumbled it when he hit the ground and all this, and I don't know. What do you think about that play? I know people got takes.
Yeah, man, officiating seems like it's just deteriorating year by year, and I don't really understand how. I don't understand how the ground can't cause a fumble, but somehow at the same time, like in this specific instance, he was down before the ball came out, and so like the idea, like, well, the ball's loose. I'm like, well, moving the ball while your hands are moving with it isn't a loose ball, and that's what we saw. So to me it's just one of those things where I'm like, this is just the zebras being the zebras. There's nothing we can really do about it, and like hopefully there's not too many of those kind of calls again. There was like another game this weekend where the officials didn't have the camera view for the official whatever. And so a team got to keep the ball on like a clear turnover. So I feel like everybody's dealing with some kind of issues right now. And like, you just kind of have to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. And I just don't, I hate that call. I mean, I if it was like they had called it a fumble live and then kept it, like I would be like a little more understanding, but I think to reverse
Overturn?
Yeah, and there wasn't really a clear recovery either. So it's like there were none of the elements that I would consider like we need to, change this call. It's like probably just say call stands and just call it a day, because I don't want to. Me personally, if I was an official, I was like, I'm not touching this. I'm not touching this one. This one's too weird. We're just gonna leave it as called and call it a day. Like I thought, if anything, they were gonna reverse it to being incomplete, and
that's what I was expecting.
Yeah, but yeah, wild turn of events there. I was like shocked when the Panthers came out on offense. It's like, what? This is incomplete. What are you talking? Oh, they reversed it, like double reverse. So okay, whatever. Yeah, weird call. I think everyone's justified in being upset. If you needed our permission to be upset, you have it. You don't need our permission though. You can be upset about whatever you want. So, yeah, the offense. Yeah, happy, happy, happy. Defense, less happy. This, I will give the defense credit. They once again in the second half, like especially after the Terrell interception, shut the Panthers down. But I think the defense. I mean, I don't know. I think people are way too turned like they're just rabid for this finish, which was a good finish, not taking anything away, but like I don't understand why people think this was even close to a good game for the defense, because I feel like that, the Panthers were kind of giving them the business for 2.5 quarters. So, I mean, I don't know. What do you think about that? I think this was a pretty rough game overall for the defense.
Yeah, you never like seeing the line get pushed around the way they were in the run game, especially when we take in, to consideration that the Panthers were down a center, a guard, and a tackle, and they've already were down a different tackle that they started the year with. So we're playing a line that at all but one position has new starters than they came into the season with. And they just had their way. And, normally we've seen throughout the season the Falcons struggling with power and power concepts, but they were just running zone straight up and pushing everybody around. Didn't matter if it was Grady and Onyemata or if it was Zach Harrison and Taquan Graham. The interior of this defensive line is soft, but it's getting worse as it spreads. The edge play in the run game. Hey, man, it's Lorenzo Carter. It's been fun, but that 0 on your jersey is starting to represent something else at this point, and that's a problem, man. I don't really understand why we keep going back to the Lorenzo Carter well. Seems like other people on the roster, at the very least, should be earning an opportunity based on his performance. I love James Smith-Williams. He disappears after he gets his TFL of the game.
He gets that one TFL.
In the world, man. He'll get a TFL in the first half, and then he is just MIA after that. He's like, my job here is done. Mm-hmm. So it's just been really frustrating. Landman came back. Unfortunately, I think Nate probably had one of his worst games as a pro. I'm just going to chalk it up to injury rust, and just kind of having to get back up to speed. And it doesn't help when the defensive line isn't giving you any assistance either. These guys are getting reached. Caden Ellis looks lost, man. Yeah. Caden Ellis has never looked more lost. I think he's suffering the most from the defensive line defensive line issues. He's starting to guess a lot. He's not really playing, what looks like would be his gap responsibilities cleanly and soundly like before. So, the whole this whole front seven is just reeling. And, the only person we're missing is Troy Anderson, who many Falcons fans I've listened to over the past 2 years are telling me he's not any help in the run. So I don't know. There's nobody coming to save this team. I thought what was interesting at one point, I was just like, where is Rook? Like, what is going on? Where's Rook Ororo? And when I look back at the snaps, I'm like, he had 19. I'm like, he had 12 last week and he was more impactful. What's going on? He was on the field for 15 pass attempts, which like we love what we saw from Rook week 1, but it was because we saw his impact in the run game. He's still a work in progress as a pass rusher. He got a pressure on a very delayed pass play. Dalton held the ball for a long time and he was able to get there with effort, but he wasn't on the field when Atlanta needed them. And so, we're in this weird stage where we're trying to manage all these snaps while also trying to keep, prioritize Onyemata and Grady, the entire time, but it doesn't really seem like they are playing like they should be priorities. It's a tough situation to be in, but Atlanta's gonna have to figure something out because Pacific Northwest, Bijan Robinson and Tyler Allgeier are coming to town, and I frankly am not looking forward to seeing either of Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I feel like it has to be scheme related because like we've seen all of these guys play the run well. Like we've seen Caden Ellis be a good run defender. We've definitely seen Nate Lamont be a good run defender. We've seen, Eddie Goldman obviously in his past. We've seen David Onyemata be a dominant run defender at times. We saw Zach Harrison defend the run well last year. Even Lorenzo Carter was a solid run defender last year. So like the fact that everyone is playing the run bad to me screams that there must be some kind of schematic issue. There were a couple plays where I saw like, I haven't honestly had a chance to look back super close. I just kind of watched the highlights again, but it seemed like we were playing they were trying to do more 4-3 looks, but they had like Onyemata and Jarrett just like spread super far. Like they were like double 3-teching it or something. And it was like, there's a huge hole in the middle of the offensive line. And it's like, yeah, this is fine for pass rush, but like, they're not like throwing the ball. Like they're trying to run the ball. So, I don't know. This team deserves props for getting it done against the pass. Like they're one of the NFL's, I think, still like top 12 pass defenses or something like that. So props to them for that. That's arguably more important, but they can't be this bad against the run. I really don't think like personnel wise, they don't have the personnel to stop the run. I think they've got to figure out a way to stuff up the run more, and maybe that's I don't want to dump on Grady Jarrett because I think actually this was Grady Jarrett's best run defense game. He was like they were letting him penetrate more, and that obviously is great for him. He flew into the backfield and made several plays. So if Jarrett's doing that, that's perfect. But we need to like figure out some way to get more like I don't know if we need to play the 4-3 look and have Zach Harrison playing edge, or like I don't know if we need just more. Like Goldman only played 8 snaps, so it's like maybe we need more Eddie Goldman if we're gonna I feel like if we're gonna play 3-4 looks, we need to play Eddie Goldman at nose. We can't just
Goldman. That's your only real nose.
Like I don't like a lot of times they're putting Onyemata or Jarrett at nose, and it's like I know Onyemata's done it before, and Jarrett's played nose in the 4-3, but that's really different. Like that's a very different responsibility. So they gotta figure something out. I agree. I wonder. I'm guessing the Rook snaps weren't like intentionally like pass rush snaps. They just happened that way. That he just happened to only have 4 run defense snaps. But yeah, and like Judon, I think especially against the run, it's not really been a plus. So that's I'm really hoping we get more out of Judon soon because he's really the only edge rusher they have, like the all well-rounded guy. I will say Arnold Ebiketie doesn't do a whole lot against the run, but he had 4 pressures. He was productive. So I've liked what we've seen from Arnold Ebiketie as a pass rusher. Same with Caden Ellis. When he gets to line up on the edge or blitz, he looks a lot better. So maybe if Troy Anderson comes back, they can use Ellis more there, and that'll help too. But it's like you look at the PFF grades, and obviously that's just one measure, but it's like all the secondary guys like have these good run defense grades, and all the like defensive line guys have these terrible run defense grades. So it's a weird setup. It's like, well, the corners and the safeties are tackling well, but that's not really who you want to be leaning on to be making all of your tackles. So hopefully we get that corrected. But I don't know what the answer is because I feel like it's not personnel. I feel like it has to be scheme related somehow.
Yeah, I think you're on the nose because this is, besides the extra draft additions, this is the same group. Like you're missing Calais Campbell and you're missing Bud Dupree. I will note them, but they're bigger losses in the passing game than they are. Well, you know what? I actually will take that back. Bud Dupree is a big loss in the run game. He would definitely be taking away every snap from Carter right now. And when you look back at this offseason, that's the biggest mistake is they picked the wrong edge player to prioritize and they stuck with Carter over Bud, which is like mind-blowing to me when you look at the fact that Bud actually gave you pass rush production. But you mentioned it, and it showed up a lot where there's this almost like double 3-tech alignment, or almost like just straight up over the guard. And I forgot who it was, but some people have pointed out that they think they could be having them do gap and a half responsibilities, which is like insane to me. That is very like old school Fangio, I feel like, defense. Like that's like something like Bill was doing like in the early 2000s with the Pats, and defensive linemen just aren't built like that anymore. Like there's very few guys that can manage and actually handle gap and a half responsibilities. And half the time it looks like that is what they're responsible for, but they're not able to recover after that first step because they either take a step towards their main one gap and then it's going back the other way. And now they have to recover and nobody's able to make that recovery or do anything about it. And they're just in a bunch of nickel. So you're in nickel all the time. You're running cover 3 all the time. Richie Grant had a spike in snaps, but it's like they don't really want to use him in the nickel when he's probably your better option in terms of helping stop the run. So I don't know what Lake is expecting to change. He seems to really be resting on the fact that like this defense just flat out executes better in the second half because like he's not making any adjustments. Like I keep seeing this line where it's like, well, man, they're really adjusting in the second half. And it's like, no, they're not. They're calling the same exact plays, but then you get Clark Phillips stepping up, or you get AJ Terrell stepping up, or Jesse Bates creates a fumble with less than 2 minutes on the clock and saves you. Like we're seeing a lot of like just elite turnovers right when you need them, and that just doesn't happen like over the course of a season in a sustainable way. So Lake is going to have to do something, and you touched on it earlier, but like where are the red sleeves?
Yeah.
No sacks since the second week. We're not seeing him get home on those extended time to throw plays where the QB I mean, Dalton had so many plays where he's just slapping the football, waiting for something to happen. And it's like, this is 30 plus year old Andy Dalton at this point. This is a guy that we should be able to like get something on, and we just couldn't really do it. Shout out to AK, like you said, he did a good job of kind of doing what Judon usually does, which is like getting the extra effort and like at least like kind of getting there if they get a little bit of extra time due to coverage. But yeah, I don't know. And the Seahawks, like I don't know, everybody's like they're on the downswing, this, that, and the other. I don't ever like playing anybody off rest. They're coming off 10 days rest. They've had a bunch of injuries. They're expected to get a few guys back. Like Geno Smith didn't have his best game on Thursday. Thursday night football is always an anomaly of a product. You should expect to see the Geno Smith that we saw before that, which is like somebody that's frankly been dicing it up and is like top 5 NFC QBs right now. So it's going to be a real test for this defense coming this weekend. And like, I'm just nervous that Jimmy Lake's going to be like, all right, boys, cover 3, nickel, y'all have got this. I'll be waiting for those second half turnovers when we need them.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's to me the biggest concern with this team now is that the defense, like the execution, you love to see it. Like, look, if you can just come up with clutch plays every week, great. You can win a lot of games doing that, but like, can you do it every week? I don't think so. And I wonder if that's why they're not making changes like they should, because they are winning the games. They are coming up with the clutch turnovers, and they're like, well, we're doing enough on defense. The stats say, you look at the basic stats, and it's like, well, the Falcons defense, it's actually not too bad. Like we're getting turnovers, we're like preventing stuff in the second half. Why change anything? We don't want to mess anything up. And it's like you're very fortunate to not be giving up a lot more points. Like the defense is you feel like comfortable with them, like, oh well, they're gonna make enough plays to win. But like how much longer is that gonna last? Because this the Panthers, like I do want to say, like the Panthers offense with Andy Dalton is not like terrible. You should get more pressure and cause more problems for them up front with their backup line in. But like the Panthers offense with Andy Dalton has not been terrible. Like I would say they're pretty average, like overall. The Panthers defense is the problem, and we saw that for sure. That defense is absolutely reeling. But like the Panthers offense, the Panthers offense with Bryce Young was the worst in the NFL for sure. But with Andy Dalton, it's a functional offense, and they obviously Chuba Hubbard's having a great season, so good for him. But yeah, it's like they need to, like, this is what we're asking for this week, Falcons, since you're clearly taking notes on everything we're saying. We need like some significant defensive change, particularly on the ground, because I think that the secondary is good enough that you're probably going to be able to just play your game, and do enough in the secondary. But like you can't be like giving up like, oh, well, we'll give you 5 free yards and we're going to play soft, relatively off zone coverage and give up 5 free yards in the run game every play. Like, you can't do both of those things. You got to pick one or the other. And honestly, you'd think like, given the switch to the 3-4 and playing more zone and adding like a big nose tackle to the mix and all this stuff with the rest of the same personnel and having Troy back and all this stuff, you would think that this run defense would have taken like another step forward to be like one of the best in the league. Last year, playing all this man coverage and like, having less depth on the interior and all this stuff, they were a much better run defense. And it's like, at a certain point, maybe Jimmy Lake just needs to look at what Ryan Nielsen was running up front and just try to do that. Like, it just be like, okay, maybe my stuff isn't the best. Maybe we're not going to, like, you don't have to throw it all out or anything. Like, but just maybe look at what was working last year with the same personnel and start incorporating more of that stuff on the early downs because these guys were clearly great at it last year. So, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to scrap your whole plan, but maybe recognize that maybe this isn't coming together the way we wanted it. Let's maybe go to more 4-3 stuff or just play 4-3 under, Dan Quinn special. This personnel, I think, is well suited to that. You can have Judon or Ebiketie stand up, have Harrison as your big 5 tech on the other side, Harrison or Rook or, whatever. Like, you have the personnel to play 4-3 under. I think we should maybe just see more of that. And, maybe if they had DeMarco Helms, we'd see less, we'd see more like 3 safety stuff. I don't know if it's that they don't really trust Richie as like a great run defender, which probably wise.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, but maybe if they had like Helms like they were expecting, we would be seeing a lot more of Helms in those 3 safety sets. But hopefully come back soon, Helms, if that is the case. But or if not, we'd love to have you no matter what. But it's the defense was just a really frustrating watch, and it's like, wow, all this great play by the offense. I'm still mad watching this game because the defense is making me sick. And I think people just kind of like memory hold that how bad the defense played up until that Terrell pick. Oh, they only allowed 3 first half points. They were like on the way to giving up a touchdown. Like, I think Chuba Hubbard had run for like 60 yards on that drive or something.
And then they're like, let's let Dalton throw it. Like,
yeah, that was weird. Dalton, did you see Dalton just like smiling and giggling? It's like, bro, like, you're 1-4. Like, I maybe take this a little more seriously and don't just throw a terrible interception to AJ Terrell, to your guy that was not even close to being open. Maybe that came back to bite him a little bit. But just a weird game defensively. Like, I was just very, very unsettled by the way it all went down. I'm happy, certainly, for the clutch plays at the end. Terrell, Clark Phillips, great stuff. But just unsettled by this game against this opponent.
Yeah. The key point you brought up, and I think it's something that people are overlooking, though, is like points. Because we've heard like, bend don't break, whatnot. They're like bend don't break for like the second half or like the fourth quarter, but this isn't a bend don't break defense because that means that people aren't scoring. Right now we are like tied like in the middle at points per game, but we are the second worst team in the league in terms of percentage of points per drive. And so that means that the opposing team is scoring on us. Oh, sorry, I didn't say the number. 50% of the time they're scoring. Like, if they get the ball, that is horrific. Like, that is a complete opposite of not breaking. Like, they're breaking, especially in the first half. They are getting scored on seemingly at will. So it's one of those things where it's like, I think like you mentioned, like the finish, like just makes you forget about everything that happened before it. And like, that's kind of happened like over the past few games. So at this point, it's really like, okay, like this isn't like, you look at like some of these metrics in a little bit more detail, and it's like, you can tell that like the dam is about to burst. Like, it's not that they're like really killing it in some of these areas. It's just that we're really coming up with those like opportunistic turnovers when we need them. So I am definitely getting worried about, the fact that we've seen all these yards being given up and it's like translating to points a lot of the time. They've done a good job at like limiting the touchdowns, but points are points. And, if you're giving up 3 or 6, like every other time the team touches the ball, like you're going to get got once you start playing the Lions, the Niners, the Seahawks. Like, these are teams that can score and have athletes all over the place. So you're going to have to figure out something to do, because you don't get to play the Panthers roster every week, and you don't get to play the Chiefs down a receiver, and you don't get to play the Steelers who only want to run the ball. And we've run into some tough teams, certainly at the beginning of our schedule, but we've run into teams that also kind of play into what we want to do on defense as well.
Yeah. It's a weird situation. I don't love it. It makes me very uncomfortable. And it's bizarre. I think that we got to see improvement from this defense. That the play has not been good enough. I think early in the season, when the offense was struggling and the defense was really carrying the load, you were willing to overlook it because it's like, oh, well, everyone's like, the defense is doing what they need to do. The offense needs to step up. The offense has now stepped up, and they've kind of taken over the last 3 games, and they're playing a lot better. The defense has kind of stayed at the same level of being like pretty average, I would say, overall, which that's not the worst case, but like they can't stay this way and expect to be a good defense. Like we need to see some adjustments. We need to see some changes, and whatever that looks like, whether that's, again, more some personnel adjustments, guys playing different places. Maybe it's schematic adjustments. Maybe it's going to more of this 4-3 stuff, letting Zach Harrison play more as an edge defender, a big 5 tech to stuff up the run some more. More Eddie Goldman playing nose if they're going to do 3-4 stuff, or just getting some more beef out there on early downs. Like, if you're not going to rush the passer well, you can't also be a bad run defense. So maybe we should be just clogging up the run with our biggest guys. Like, throw Rook and throw Rook and Eddie Goldman and Zach Harrison and some of the thickest lads we got out there. Clog up the run, and at least we'll do that well. But yeah, it's like we can't continue on with bad run defense and no pass rush. Like, if you have to pick one or the other, obviously you'd pick pass rush, but I don't think pass rush is necessarily an option. So I think run defense could be an option. So maybe we just go that direction, and get that done. But yeah, I did want to we need to talk about Clark Phillips. Goes down at the 1 on what should have been a pick 6, to end the game, which, like, he's definitely coached to do that. That's like a very heads up play. Also, they were ahead 18 points with like 90 seconds to go. Clark, you can score that touchdown. It's okay. Like, you'd be up 25 points with 90 seconds to go. It's almost literally time impossible to get like 3 touchdowns, more than 3 touchdowns in 90 seconds. Now, this is the Falcons. I appreciate that he didn't want to like leave the door open for that kind of situation to happen in the first place. But yeah, it would have been fun. Like, I think he deserved it. Like, that play, go score, buddy. It's okay. Like, you're up this many. If this was a 1-score game, okay, I get it. But potentially 4-score game,
Man.
I think it's okay. Yeah.
Put 40 on them.
Yeah.
You never know what the division race will come down to, if point differential is going to matter or anything like that. I think my favorite thing about the play is that Clark was like, all right, I'm going to prove to all of you that I could score here if I wanted to, but I'm not going to at the very last second. But he's like, I can't walk into the film room and they're like, oh yeah, man, you slid down because you knew you weren't going to score on that one. But he's like, no. Takes it all the way back, puts a little move on Dalton. And I was like, I was so ready for him. I was like, punch it in, Clark. And then he slid down and I'm like, oh, like I you love it from a team perspective. Like you said, it's like, yeah, it's impossible. You don't want to see any injuries take place because of a play that happened that didn't need to happen or anything like that. But like, man, Clark Phillips, you are a better man than me. My family would have died hearing about that pick 6. That football would have never left, my possession. It's just is just such a selfless act that you feel like just seeing it was just like astounding, because it's like very rarely are you ever going to see a player care about situational football when their team is up 18. Like nine times out of 10 they're taking it. But that's what makes Clark number one. That's why we love having him. And I think that, he's somebody where you're going to have to start finding ways to get him in, because the guy is just like making plays and always around the football. And, we saw the touchdown in the corner. If Clark waits a tenth of a second to jump, he's actually punching that like away, and it's an incomplete pass. Like he just mistimed it by a hair. So it's like, I'm not even mad at coverage there. It's just like a football play, and it's just something that happens, every once again. So my thing is that like I think he is better on the outside. Like I know there's this big push to get him in the slot. He was not a slot in college. He was a primary outside corner. This man was mixing it up with Drake London in college. Like he is a technician. He understands all of his responsibilities really well on the outside. So, Mike Hughes has been holding it down. Definitely don't want to mess with the mojo going on over there. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of see what they do moving forward, kind of what unique ways they get Clark involved. Maybe we just put like 40 pounds on Mike and move him inside or on the line or something. I kind of like what he's giving us in the run game. Might be the
strong safety is in your future, Mike Hughes. Yeah, you're the new DeMarco Helms. Yeah. But no, you love what you see from Clark. They clearly like him a lot. Like they're giving him snaps like when they don't really need to. Like they're taking Mike Hughes off the field for him sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like. So that's meaningful. I think they really like him. I think they want him to get more snaps, because I think they know, like, they're not bringing back Mike Hughes. They really like what they've seen, and they're probably pretty happy that he could get paid after this.
Could be a nice comp pick.
They're probably like, ooh, I like this a lot. But Clark is probably our long term too. So we we should get him some reps, and like they have, and I mean, he's not as good a run defender as Mike. I get it. He's like 20 pounds lighter. That happens. But
still a great tackler.
He is a good tackler. Like, he's a good tackler, not as thick, not going to necessarily lay the boom, but he knows where to be. He knows how to bring guys down. And, this is the scheme for him. Like, last year's scheme, I was like,
it is
kind of bizarre. Like, I was like, wow, they took Clark Phillips to play in a man-heavy scheme in the slot. Okay. But like, Clark Phillips in a zone-heavy scheme outside. Okay, yeah, this makes total sense. It's just a year late, but whatever. It works. It works. But, I love Clark Phillips. He's a guy that I think you just want to root for. Huge football head. Shout out to Clark Phillips Sr., who has been DMing me like during the games and stuff. Love to hear from you, Mr. Phillips. It's been a joy to get your takes on the team. It's you love to see it. You love to have the corner depth, because you're going to need it at some point, right? Whether it's this year or another year or what have you. You're going to need the corner depth at worst. And at best, maybe he's your long-term too, and he gives you an affordable option next to AJ Terrell, because Terrell's gotten paid, so you're not going to necessarily be able to spend big money. Maybe I'm sure we'll see more draft picks added to the position, long-term. But love Clark Phillips, what we're getting from him. And again, against these high-powered passing attacks, maybe we might even see dime packages where he's got to be out there. The Seahawks are going to try to throw as many receivers on the field as they possibly can, because they have a lot of them. They have a lot of good ones. So this is a tough, I mean, we'll spend a couple minutes on the Seahawks game. Like it is a terrifying matchup like this. We don't match up well with them, because their Achilles heel is that they don't pass protect. They do not. Pass protection is not a thing for these Seahawks. Geno Smith, I feel like, is under pressure like over 50% of his dropbacks. So maybe this is the Falcons pass rush get right game, but we've been saying that for like 4 weeks now. I'm not sure that game is ever coming. So if they can't take advantage of this Seahawks offensive line, the Seahawks are built to just throw it all over the yard and just run the ball whenever they're not doing that. They have two great running backs. Kenneth Walker, God bless Kenneth Walker for saving my fantasy team when he got back from injury. Happy to have him. Maybe this week I'll accept a smaller point total from Kenneth Walker, but we know how good their receivers are. We know how many different skill sets they have. It's going to take all the Falcons' powers on the defensive side of the ball to try to contain this offense, and I don't expect them to hold them down. So that's going to mean that the offense this is probably a game just like the Bucks game where we're going to need the offense to win this game. And luckily, the offense is kind of like rounding into form at the perfect time for this type of matchup. Like this could be like a 45-40 game. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is
I think
a
it
big
might be
score.
like the best game of the week, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be game of the week.
Yeah, and now we're gonna see like a 17-12 game just because we said that. It's gonna be some just complete slop fest, no understanding whatsoever. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited for this game. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I feel like most Falcons fans like look at themselves and they're like, man, we're like the Lions, or like we're close to being like the Lions. But like when I think of the team that we're closest to around the league, I honestly think of the Seahawks. It's very similar setup. You've got veteran QB that's still got some juice, playing a lot better than some of the young guns around the league. You've got a wide receiving core with different abilities that all complement each other. They can get the ball to three different guys any way they need to. And then you have, I think, the most underrated running back duo in the league with K9 and Charbonnet. So, like you said, this is a team that like we don't match up too great with because of the pass rush being their weakness. But and what's really funny is that both of us have like the worst run defenses you can imagine. Like the Seahawks run defense has been terrible. So this is a game where it's like you could see, like you said, 40 something, and you could see 200, 300 yards on the ground coming from either team as well, because it's just kind of one of those things where it's like both of these teams have similar issues. The Seahawks are better at getting to the quarterback, but they've lost like their best pass rushers, and it just hasn't quite been the same like it was at the beginning of the season when they had started hot. So, yeah, I'm nervous for this game. I think this is like the first. I think this is like like Tampa Bay was a litmus test, but like now that we're like outside of the division and like we're having to play, the conference and everything like that, I think this is like the next real litmus test. Like this is a team that you could see in January. But this is also kind of one of those ones where it's like, this is a team you definitely want to get this win over because you're thinking playoff seeding. You're thinking like all these different strategic things down the line and whatnot. So I'm really intrigued. I'm really like going into this one like, all right, like this is going to be pretty even. I know we were talking like, what would the spread be for this? And it feels like a classic like -1, -2, like kind of spread. So I think that, yeah, I think it's going to be a good game, but it's definitely going to be one where it's like, we got to show up. We got to play complete from beginning to end. Because if not, like we're very liable to get caught lacking, and taken advantage of.
Yeah, I agree. So it's a big game. A lot on the line here. Again, it could be, the Seahawks are on a downswing record wise, but again, I think after 3 weeks, we were sort of like, well, this team, this Seahawks team could be a real contender, and they could get back there. Especially if they do get some of these players back. I mean, obviously at this stage, we're not really sure. We haven't really heard any updates yet. We'll see, but that Seahawks team could be good. I think the defense kind of got figured out after the first 3 weeks, and that's kind of been why they're struggling a lot more. So we'll see, what adjustments they can make. We're talking about the Falcons making adjustments too. So hopefully it's the Falcons that make the adjustments and we can take advantage of the Seahawks defense this week. But this could be a good one. I agree with you. What you said earlier. Like I think this could be one of the games of the week. In terms of if you want to watch scoring, I think we could definitely see scoring in this one. But yeah. Definitely, I'll be breaking down this game in more detail coming out to you guys later this week once we get more injury report information, stuff like that. And then, of course, we'll have the post-game show come to you guys on Sunday after this one ends. But before we get to all that, yeah, Tre'Shon, any final thoughts before we sign off of this week's Tuesday takes?
It turns out the secret to the Mike McDonald defense is 8 first-rounders and Kyle Hamilton. So we are in luck. I will say I don't want to leave people feeling too much of a panic. Like to your point, the McDonald defense isn't quite transferring over, and turns out the Jimmys and Joes matter in the league, and you got to have the players to pull off certain schemes. So I will leave with that. And the other thing I'll leave with is that the Falcons are for sure going to remain undefeated in the NFC South after this game. So, don't fret too much. And remember to enjoy the moment, because again, like, this is the best start we've had since 2016. I don't really remember anything about that season. I think the offense was doing a really good job of just putting up points regardless of what the defense was doing. And so maybe we see that continue here, but it's just been really great. You and I have talked about it a lot. We're pretty much looking at the edge class, or what QB or what this, that, or the other in the draft is right now, and we're still a ways away from those discussions, because we got to keep our eye on the ball, which is getting into the playoffs, because we're in the driver's seat for that right now.
Absolutely. And the Bucs got to go play the Ravens this week, so the Falcons can get another NFC win, obviously, help out their conference record and get a game above the Bucs. Obviously Tampa Bay's pretty, looking pretty good themselves. Got a little shaky there against the Saints' backup quarterback, but
27 in the hurt on.
Yeah. Then just put the hurt on him after that, showing that Saints team, I think the Saints are probably cooked, given their injuries. Like, I think this, and not like Rattler didn't play like horribly or anything, but I don't know are you really expecting him with maybe no Olave, no Shaheed, like more injuries
they made him
elsewhere?
throw 40 times. So I'm like, if you're going to ask Spencer Rattler to throw the football 40 times the rest of this year, like, good luck, man. Like, yeah. I think he showed like a lot of the upside people talked about. You still saw like the concerns, and then like you talked about with the supporting cast just all heading to the medical room, it just kind of feels like, man, this feels like it's leading up to what could be a big letdown. And like their schedule, which like I remember looking at it and I'm like, man, of course they get this like super soft like second like quarter or mid-season stretch, and now it's like they could legitimately lose some of these games that would have been gimmies, I think, even with a healthy roster. And even if they had gone on this like 4-game slide, now I'm like, the slide looks like it could keep going.
Yeah. I definitely will cheer on the downfall of the Saints, no matter what. Even though like it would have been better for the Falcons if the Saints had pulled off that like miracle. I won't. You'll never see me getting upset. But talk about that the Saints 2-0 start, thinking you could just see them like shit talking the NFL, like, oh, you guys were so wrong
40
about
points per
us.
game.
Yeah, and it's like maybe like wait, a couple more weeks before we take a victory. Yeah, 4 straight losses since then, including a big one to our Falcons. So hey, just saying is all.
It's
tough
not
spot
for me,
there.
but...
No, not for me. Yeah, sorry to hear that. Sorry for your loss, or not reading all that though. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching today's Dirty Birds and Brews. Thanks again, Tre'Shon Diaz, for coming on, co-hosting this Tuesday program with me. He's at Tre'Shon. Anything else you want to plug before we sign off today?
No, just keep tuning in, keep reading the work we're putting out for you guys at the Falcoholic. Just want to say right now, 2 weeks ago, I talked about Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts had 80 yards, and he had his first back-to-back games of 70 plus. Last week we talked about the run game. Run game put up, I think technically 225 when you don't count the negative stats and some of the other things that happen. But so we'll see what we talk about this upcoming week. Who knows? I don't know if I want to burn the pass rush card just yet. I feel like I might need to save that one for a rainy day. So maybe we talk about the run. Maybe we talk about something else. But gotta tune in to find out.
That's right. We're hashtag profits on here. We've stolen the label from Aaron Freeman, so I'm sure I'll get a subtweet for that one. But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. We got lots more content for you guys coming this season. We're not even to the halfway point yet, but definitely better vibes than any of the past, 6 seasons. So got to keep it going. Got to make some, adjustments here and there to get things done. But on a very positive path, very positive trajectory with this team. And we've got some important games coming up. After this game, another another bout with the Bucks again, right? So,
Oh man,
jeez, yeah.
I'm almost happy we're getting it out of the way early.
Yeah, no days off for this team over the next few as they get geared up for some important games here. So make sure to like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. That helps us out. Leave a comment. We appreciate those as well. If you want to support the show, you can check us out on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. You can check out the channel memberships on YouTube if you're more of a video enjoyer. And again, check out the site, thefalcoholic.com, for all that written content as well. But until next time, guys, I'm Kevin. I have Falcoholic Kevin. He's Tre'Shon at Tre'Shon. Guys, we will see you next time. Have a great night. Thanks.